The coffee tasted like hot metal that morning, the same metal taste that had been living on my tongue since they drove away. The nursing home coffee always tasted like that, like burnt promises and stale regret. I was 71 years old, and I had been waiting by that window for 9 years. The window faced the parking lot. The parking lot was where families pulled in and pulled out, pulled in with birthday cakes, and pulled out with their guilt tucked away like a receipt they would never look at again. My window was on the second floor. I had a clear view of every car that entered, every brake light that glowed red in the afternoon sun, every child helping a parent out of a passenger seat, every grandchild running toward the front doors with a balloon in their fist. I would watch those cars, and I would remember. I remembered the station wagon I drove for 17 years, the one with the stain on the back seat from when my youngest threw up her apple juice on the way to Yellowstone. My husband Gary said we should get it cleaned professionally. I said no. That stain was a memory. That stain meant we went somewhere as a family. Gary is dead now. He died 5 years before I ended up in this place. He died in our bed, our real bed, the king-size mattress we bought in 1987 from Sears, the one with the headboard Gary built with his own hands. He was a carpenter, not the fancy kind, the kind who showed up at 7 in the morning with a thermos of coffee and came home smelling like sawdust and sweat. He built that headboard for our 25th anniversary. He carved our initials into the wood, G and M inside a heart. He cried when he gave it to me. Gary cried exactly 4 times in 42 years of marriage. The day I said yes, the day our first daughter was born, the day his mother died, and the day he gave me that headboard. After Gary died, I stayed in that house for 4 more years. The house on Maple Street, 3 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms, a backyard with a dying oak tree, and a mortgage that should have been paid off but wasn't because Gary got sick, and the medical bills ate everything. I mean everything. We had savings. We had retirement funds. We had a small life insurance policy. All of it went to the hospital, to the specialists, to the pills that cost $900 a month, and kept him alive for an extra 8 months. 8 months. I would do it again. Every penny, every sleepless night in that plastic chair next to his bed. I would do it all again, just to hear him say my name one more time. Margaret. He always said it slow. Margaret, like he was tasting the word before he let it leave his mouth. After Gary died, my daughters stepped in. I have 2 daughters, Karen and Lisa. Karen is the oldest, 48 now. She was 39 when her father died. Lisa is 45. They came to the house every day for the first month. They brought casseroles and sympathy cards and quiet hugs. They sat with me on the couch where Gary used to sit. They held my hands. They promised me I would never be alone. Karen said it first. She said, "Mom, you raised us. You sacrificed everything for us. Now it is our turn." And I believed her. Of course I believed her. She was my daughter. I changed her diapers. I stayed up with her when she had the croup. I taught her how to tie her shoes and how to ride a bike and how to stand up for herself when the mean girls whispered in the hallway. She was my blood, my flesh, the first face I saw after 19 hours of labor that started on a Tuesday and ended on a Wednesday with a thunderstorm rattling the hospital windows. Lisa was easier. She came out after 6 hours. She looked up at me with these wide gray eyes that never changed. She still has those eyes, gray like winter clouds. She used to look at me with love in those eyes. Now I don't know what lies behind them. Maybe nothing. Maybe that is worse. For 4 years after Gary died, I managed. I cooked for myself. I drove myself to the grocery store. I went to church on Sundays. I sat in the pew where me and Gary sat for 30 years. The pastor would shake my hand after the service and ask how I was doing. I would say fine. Fine was a lie, but fine was easier than the truth. The truth was I talked to Gary every night before I fell asleep. I told him about my day, about the garden, about the squirrels that kept stealing the birdseed, about the phone call from Karen where she talked for 20 minutes about her husband's promotion and never once asked how I was doing. I told Gary that I missed him, that I was lonely, that the house felt like a museum of our life together, and I was the only visitor who still remembered what everything meant. Then the fall happened. It was February. Ice on the front steps. I was bringing in the mail. Just the mail. A few bills and a catalog from a gardening company that knew I would never buy anything because my back hurt too much to kneel in the dirt anymore. I stepped on the second step, and my foot went out from under me like the world had been greased. I landed on my hip. I heard the crack before I felt it. That sound is something you never forget. like a tree branch, breaking inside your own body. I laid there on the cold concrete for 45 minutes before the mailman found me. His name is Derek. He is a good man. He called 911, and he held my hand, and he told me everything would be okay. Derek was the first person to hold my hand in over a year. The hospital fixed my hip, a metal rod, a week of physical therapy where a girl named Tiffany, who could not have been older than 22, made me walk up and down a hallway with a walker. Tiffany had purple streaks in her hair and a nose ring, and she was the kindest person I met in that entire year. She called me sweetie, and she never once made me feel like a burden. I wish Tiffany was my daughter, but she was not. My daughters were at home. Karen was busy with her real estate business. Lisa was busy with her 2 boys, and her husband, who traveled for work. They visited me in the hospital exactly twice. Together, for 20 minutes, they stood at the foot of my bed, and they looked at each other like they were having a conversation I was not invited to. A social worker came to see me on my 3rd day in the hospital. Her name was Deb. Deb had short gray hair and reading glasses on a chain around her neck. She sat down next to my bed, and she told me that I could not go home alone. Not after the fall, not with the stairs, not with the ice and the mail and the grocery store and the million small dangers that had never seemed dangerous until my hip cracked open on the steps. Deb said I had options: in-home care, moving in with one of my daughters, or a skilled nursing facility. She said those words like she was reading them from a script. Skilled nursing facility. That is what they call nursing homes now. Like if you say it fancy enough, it stops being a warehouse where old people go to wait for death. I called Karen first. I told her what Deb said. There was a long pause on the other end of the line. Then Karen said she would talk to Lisa. They would figure something out. They would take care of me. I remember feeling relieved. I remember thinking, this is what family does. This is why I spent 30 years packing lunches and driving to soccer practice and sewing Halloween costumes at 2 in the morning, because my children would be there when I needed them. That is the deal. That is the unspoken contract of motherhood. You pour everything you have into these small humans, and one day when you are small again, they pour back into you. 2 days later, Karen and Lisa came to the hospital together. They sat down on either side of my bed. They held my hands. They told me they loved me. They told me they had found the perfect place, a facility, just 15 minutes from Karen's house. They would visit every week, every single week. Lisa said she would bring the boys, my grandsons, Brandon and Tyler, 8 and 10 at the time. They would come on Sundays after church. We would have lunch together. We would play cards. It would be just like home, but safer. Safer for me, safer for them. They both worked so hard. They both had so much on their plates. This way, I would have round-the-clock care. I would have activities. I would have other women my age to talk to. I would not be alone in that big empty house with the stairs and the ice and the memories. I said okay. I said okay because I was tired, because my hip hurt, because I missed Gary, because the thought of going back to that house where every corner held a ghost felt like drowning slowly. I said okay because I trusted them, because they were my daughters, because I could not imagine a world where my own children would hurt me on purpose. They drove me to the facility on a Tuesday. It was raining, a soft gray rain that matched the sky and my mood, and the color of Lisa's eyes. The building was beige. Beige walls, beige floors, beige ceilings. Like someone had taken all the color out of the world and painted it over with the word institutional. There was a front desk with a woman named Rhonda who wore a name tag and a scowl. There was a smell. You know the smell of bleach and pureed vegetables and Depends and hand sanitizer and something else underneath. Something sweet and rotten. The smell of bodies that are slowly giving up. My room was on the 2nd floor. Room 217. A bed, a dresser, a nightstand, and a window. The window faced the parking lot. At first, I thought that was a good thing. I would see my family pull in. I would wave at them from the window before they even made it to the front door. I would watch Karen get out of her SUV with a bag of groceries. I would watch Lisa unbuckle the boys from their car seats. I would watch them walk toward me, and my heart would swell with the kind of love that only a mother knows. For the first 3 months they came. Karen came on Saturdays. Lisa came on Sundays. They brought magazines and soft socks and fruit cups that I did not want. They stayed for an hour, sometimes 2. They told me about their lives. Karen's real estate business was booming. She sold a house to a young couple who paid $300,000 over asking. She said that like it was normal, like money was air. Lisa's husband, Mark, got promoted again. They were thinking about a vacation to Hawaii. The boys were doing well in school. Brandon got in on his science project. Tyler made the travel soccer team. I listened. I nodded. I smiled. I asked questions. I was still their mother. I still wanted to know everything about their lives. I still wanted to be part of the story, even if I was no longer in the story. Even if I was just a spectator in a beige room with a window that showed me the world I used to live in. Then the visits started to shorten. Karen would come on Saturday, but she would have her phone in her hand the whole time. She would text while I was talking. She would take calls from clients and step into the hallway and leave me sitting there with my mouth half open like a fish that had forgotten how to breathe. Lisa would come on Sunday, but she would bring the boys, and the boys would run around the common area and knock over the card table where the old men played checkers. And Lisa would spend the whole time chasing them and apologizing. And then she would leave early because the boys were too much for this place. She said this place like it was a punishment, like visiting me was a chore she had to check off her list. By month 6, the visits were every other week. By month 9, they were once a month. By the end of the first year, they were sporadic. A visit here, a visit there, a phone call on my birthday, a card on Mother's Day with $20 inside, and a signature that looked rushed. Love, Karen and Lisa. No message. No, I miss you. No, Mom, you are the best. Just their names. Like they were signing a receipt at a restaurant. I told myself it was okay. They were busy. They had lives. They had children and husbands and jobs and mortgages. And I was just an old woman in a nursing home. I was not exciting. I was not fun. I was not a vacation to Hawaii or a promotion or a science project. I was a reminder of what waited for them at the end of their own roads. And who wants to look at that? The years passed. I stopped counting the visits because there were no visits to count. I watched other families come and go. I watched daughters hold their mothers' hands. I watched sons push their fathers in wheelchairs out to the garden. I watched grandchildren draw pictures with crayons that the nurses kept in a plastic bucket by the front desk. I watched all of this from my window, from my chair, from the edge of my bed, where I sat every afternoon with my hands folded in my lap and my heart folded in my chest. I called Karen every week for the first 3 years. She would answer sometimes. She would say she was in a meeting. She would say she would call me back. She never called back. I stopped calling after a while, not because I was angry, because I was tired. Because hearing her voice for 30 seconds hurt more than not hearing it at all. Lisa was worse. Lisa stopped answering altogether. I would call, and it would ring 4 times, and then go to voicemail. Her voicemail message changed over the years. First it was, "Hi, this is Lisa, leave a message." Then it was, "You have reached the Jones family, please leave a message." Then it was just the automated robot voice telling me the mailbox was full. My mailbox was full too, full of silence, full of the things I wanted to say but could not, full of the names of my grandchildren who probably forgot I existed. Brandon and Tyler. Would they even recognize me if they saw me on the street? Would they know that I used to rock them to sleep when they were babies? That I sang them the same lullabies I sang to their mother? That I held them in my arms and promised them they would always be safe as long as I was alive? I was alive. I was still alive, but I might as well have been a photograph on a shelf, a memory that no one bothered to remember. The nurses were kind, most of them. There was a woman named Keisha who worked the night shift. She would sit with me sometimes when I could not sleep. She would hold my hand and tell me about her own grandmother who lived in a facility 3 states away. Keisha drove 12 hours every month to see her grandmother. 12 hours. She would leave after her shift on Friday and drive through the night and spend Saturday with her grandma, and drive back Sunday, and show up for her next shift on Monday with bags under her eyes, and nothing but love in her voice when she talked about it. I asked Keisha why she did it, why she drove so far for a woman who probably did not even remember her name half the time. Keisha looked at me like I had asked why the sky was blue. She said, because she is my grandmother, because she raised me, because she sacrificed for me, because I owe her everything. I wanted to tell Keisha that my daughters did not feel that way, that somewhere along the way they forgot what they owed. Or maybe they never knew. Maybe I never taught them. Maybe I spent so much time giving that I never showed them how to receive. Maybe that was my fault, the great sin of motherhood. Loving too much, giving too much, making it look so easy that your children grow up thinking it was nothing. By year 5, I stopped waiting by the window. I could not do it anymore. The watching, the hoping, the disappointment, Every time, a silver SUV pulled into the parking lot and turned out to belong to someone else. I moved my chair to the other side of the room, facing the wall. The wall was beige. The wall did not break my heart, but the wall did not give me anything either. So after a few months, I moved back to the window, because hope is a stupid thing. It does not die. It just goes dormant. It hides in the corners of your chest and waits for a sliver of light. And I still had light. I still had a tiny voice in my head that said maybe today, maybe this Sunday, maybe for my birthday, maybe for Christmas, maybe they are just late, maybe they are in the car right now, maybe they are buying flowers, maybe they are sorry, maybe they love me, maybe. For 9 years, I lived on maybe. 9 years of birthdays alone. 9 Thanksgivings at a communal table with strangers who had also been left behind. 9 Christmases where the nurses hung a plastic tree in the common room and someone's daughter brought in cookies, and I ate 3 of them and pretended they were the ones I used to make with Karen and Lisa when they were little. The recipe was my mother's, sugar cookies with red and green sprinkles. We would make a mess of the kitchen every year, flour on the floor, dough on their faces. Gary would come home from work and laugh at the 3 of us covered in sugar and love. Those were the best days, the days before everything got complicated, before money and marriage and distance, and time carved a canyon between us that I never knew how to cross. I wrote letters, dozens of them. I would sit at the little desk in my room and write to Karen and Lisa on the stationery that one of the church volunteers brought in. The stationery had flowers on it, daisies, my favorite. I would write about the weather, about the bird that built a nest on my windowsill, about the new resident in room 204 who used to be a teacher just like me. I would write that I missed them, that I loved them, that I hoped they were happy. I never mailed the letters. I did not have their addresses. They moved. Karen sold her first house and bought a bigger one. Lisa and Mark moved to a development with a pool and a golf course. I knew the names of the towns, but not the street names. I could have asked the front desk to look them up. I could have asked one of the nurses to help me find their phone numbers, but I did not, because some part of me already knew. Some part of me already understood that they did not want to be found. The 9th year was the hardest. I turned 71. No call, no card, no visit, just the morning stretching into afternoon, stretching into evening, stretching into night. I sat by my window, and I watched the parking lot fill up and empty out, fill up with families who still cared, empty out with families who could not stay. I watched a woman about my age get helped out of a minivan by her daughter. The daughter held her mother's arm. She walked slowly. She looked at her mother with soft eyes. She said something that made the old woman laugh, a real laugh, the kind that comes from somewhere deep. I pressed my hand against the glass. I wanted to feel that laugh. I wanted to feel someone's arm around mine. I wanted to hear my daughter's voice say something that was not rushed or distracted or full of excuses. That night I did not sleep. I lay in my bed and I stared at the ceiling. The ceiling had a water stain in the corner that looked like a map of a country I would never visit. I thought about Gary. I thought about the headboard he built. I thought about the initials G and M inside a heart. I wondered if Karen had kept that headboard or thrown it away. I wondered if anyone had kept anything of mine. The photo albums, the Christmas ornaments, the quilts my grandmother made by hand, the rocking chair I nursed both my daughters in, the chair that had my body's imprint in the cushion, the shape of me, my shape. Did it mean anything to anyone now that I was not sitting in it? I thought about my life before the nursing home, before Gary died, before the medical bills, and the fall and the metal rod in my hip. I thought about the woman I used to be, a woman who could bake a pie from scratch, a woman who could sew a hem and plant a garden and balance a checkbook and drive a car in a snowstorm without blinking, a woman who was needed, who was wanted, who was loved not out of obligation, but out of pure, uncomplicated joy. That woman was gone. I did not know exactly when she left. Maybe it was gradual. Maybe she faded like the ink on an old photograph. Or maybe she died on the same day Gary did, and the person who checked into this facility was just a ghost wearing her face. The next morning, I got out of bed and I walked to the window. My hip ached. It always ached. The metal rod was cold in the mornings. I sat down in my chair and I looked out at the parking lot. Empty. Too early for visitors. The sun was just coming up, pink and orange and gold, the kind of sunrise that makes you believe in second chances. I watched the light spread across the asphalt, across the cars that were already there, the ones that belonged to the overnight staff, the ones that never left, because the people driving them had nowhere else to go. That is when I decided. I did not plan it. Not really. It was not a decision I made with my brain. It was something deeper, something older, something that lived in my bones and my blood and the silent spaces between my heartbeats. I decided that I would not die in this room. I would not take my last breath on this beige-walled floor with this metal rod in my hip and this window that showed me a world that had moved on without me. I would not let my daughters show up one day to claim my body and pretend to cry at my funeral so they could feel better about the 9 years they spent forgetting I existed. I waited until the morning shift change. 7 o'clock. The nurses were busy with medications and breakfast trays, and the chaos that comes with waking up 40 elderly people who do not want to be woken up. I put on my clothes, the ones I wore when I arrived, a pair of gray slacks, a blue cardigan, comfortable shoes, the shoes Gary bought me for our last anniversary. They were still in good shape. I had barely worn them. There was nowhere to walk in this place, except the hallway and the common room, and the small patch of concrete they called a garden. I had saved some money, not much, a few $100s, that I had hidden in my dresser over the years. Birthday money from the rare visit, change from the $10 bills one of the church volunteers gave me every time she came. She was named Ruth. Ruth was 83, and she came to the facility every other Tuesday to read scripture to anyone who would listen. I listened, not because I needed scripture, because I needed Ruth. Because Ruth was the only person who touched me anymore. A hand on my shoulder, a pat on my back, a hug on the way out. Ruth hugged me like I mattered, like I was not just a bed number and a medication schedule and a name on a chart. I took the money. I took my ID. I took the small photo I had of Gary and the girls. It was taken in 1995, a Polaroid. Karen was 17. Lisa was 14. They were both wearing matching sweaters I had knitted for them, red with white snowflakes. They were laughing at something Gary had said. I could not remember what it was now, but I remembered the laughter, the way it filled our living room, the way it felt like a blanket wrapping around all four of us. I walked out of room 217. I walked down the hallway, past the common room, where a few early risers were already watching the morning news, past the nurse's station, where Keisha was charting. Keisha looked up and smiled at me. She said, "Morning, MS. You are up early." I said I wanted to get some fresh air. She nodded. She told me to be careful on the steps. She said she would see me at lunch. I walked out the front door, the door that families used, the door that had not opened for me in 9 years. The air was cold. It was October. The leaves were turning, red and orange and gold, the same colors as the sunrise. I stood on the sidewalk for a moment, and I breathed. Deep breaths, the kind of breaths you take when you have been holding your breath for 9 years, and you forgot what air felt like. I walked to the bus stop at the end of the street. There was a bench. I sat down. A man was already there. Black man, maybe 60 years old. He had a duffel bag and a kind face. He asked me if I was okay. I said I was fine. He said, "Where are you headed?" I said I was not sure yet. He smiled. He said that was the best kind of trip, the one with no destination. He said the bus would take me wherever I wanted to go. I just had to get on. The bus came. I got on. I paid my fare with the coins Ruth had given me. The bus was mostly empty. I sat in the back by the window. I watched the facility shrink in the distance. The beige building, the parking lot, the window of room 217. My window, the window I had waited by for 9 years, waiting for people who never came. I did not cry. I thought I would cry, but my eyes were dry. My eyes had been dry for a long time. I think I ran out of tears somewhere around year 6. Or maybe I just decided that my daughters did not deserve my tears anymore. They had taken enough from me. My money, my time, my body, my youth, my hopes, my dreams, my place in the world. They would not take my tears too. The bus took me to the city where Karen lived, the city where Lisa lived, the city where my grandchildren went to school and played soccer and grew up without me. I did not go to their houses. I did not knock on their doors. I did not want to see the look on their faces when they realized I was still alive. Surprise, discomfort, obligation, guilt. I had seen all of those looks before, on the rare visits, on the rushed phone calls, on the Christmas cards with the $20 bills inside. I did not need to see them again. I found a small hotel, the kind that rents rooms by the week. It was not fancy. The carpet was stained. The wallpaper was peeling. The heater made a noise like a dying animal, but it had a bed and a bathroom and a window that faced a brick wall. The brick wall was honest. The brick wall did not promise me anything. For 2 days, I stayed in that room. I did not call anyone. I did not tell anyone where I was. The facility probably noticed I was gone. Maybe they called Karen. Maybe they left a message. Maybe Karen listened to the message and went back to her real estate business and her big house and her life that did not have room for a 71-year-old mother who could not stop falling down. On the second night, I was watching television, the local news. A story came on about a missing woman, an elderly woman, a resident of a nursing home on the edge of town. The news anchor said her name, my name, Margaret. They showed a photo, not a recent photo, a photo from years ago, from before. I was smiling in the photo. I was wearing a dress. I looked happy. I barely recognized her. That woman who smiled for the camera. That woman who believed her daughters would come for her. The news anchor said family members were concerned. They said the family was heartbroken. They said the family was searching everywhere. They interviewed Karen. Karen was crying on camera. Real tears, or what looked like real tears. She said, "Mom, please come home. We love you. We miss you. We are so sorry." Lisa stood next to her. Lisa was not crying. Lisa was staring at the ground. Lisa's gray eyes looked like winter clouds before a storm. I watched my daughters on the television screen. I watched them perform their grief for the cameras. I watched them act like they had spent the last 9 years worrying about me, like they had spent the last 9 years calling and visiting, and doing anything other than forgetting I existed. I wanted to feel something. Anger, satisfaction, vindication, but I felt nothing. Not nothing exactly. Something worse. A hollow emptiness, where my love for them used to live. The news anchor turned to a woman standing next to Karen, a woman I did not recognize at first. Then I saw her name on the screen, Attorney Jennifer Walsh, Family Legal Counsel. The anchor asked the attorney why the family was so concerned. The attorney said, because Margaret had a large life insurance policy, because Margaret owned property, because Margaret had assets that needed to be protected. The anchor asked if the family was worried about Margaret's safety. The attorney said, of course, but then she added something else, something that made the room go cold. She said the family needed to locate Margaret before any legal documents could be finalized, before any estate planning could be completed, before any inheritance could be distributed. I turned off the television. I sat in the dark for a long time. The heater made its dying animal sound. The brick walls stared back at me. I thought about the life insurance policy, the one Gary left, the one I had never touched, the one I had planned to leave to Karen and Lisa, my inheritance to them, the last thing I could give, the last thing I could do to show them that I loved them even when they did not love me back. But they did not want me. They wanted the money. They had always wanted the money. Maybe that was the only reason they put me in that facility in the first place. Not to keep me safe, to keep me contained, to keep me alive, just long enough for the checks to clear, to keep me in a beige room with a window that faced a parking lot, so they did not have to look at me, so they did not have to see the woman who gave them everything slowly disappear. I got up from the bed. I walked to the window. The brick wall was still there. It had not moved. It had not changed. It was just a wall, solid, unfeeling, unbreakable. I picked up the phone on the nightstand. I dialed a number I had memorized years ago, the number of an attorney, not the one on the news. A different one, a lawyer I had met through Ruth, the church volunteer. Ruth had given me his card 2 years ago. She said if I ever needed anything, if I ever wanted to make changes to my will, if I ever wanted to protect myself from the people who were supposed to love me. I still had the card. I had kept it in the same drawer as the money, under my socks, under the photo of Gary and the girls. The phone rang 3 times. A man answered. His voice was calm, professional. I told him my name. Margaret. I told him I was the woman from the news, the missing woman. He paused. Then he asked if I was safe. I said I was. He asked where I was. I told him the name of the hotel. He said he would be there in 20 minutes. I hung up the phone. I sat on the edge of the bed. I looked at the photo of Gary and the girls, Karen and Lisa, 17 and 14, matching sweaters, laughing at something their father said. A moment frozen in time. A moment that was real. A moment that mattered. That moment was gone now. Those people were gone. Karen and Lisa had become strangers. Gary was dead, and I was sitting in a cheap hotel room with a brick wall for a window and a lawyer on the way. The lawyer came. His name was Mr. Thompson. He was older, maybe 65, gray hair, glasses, a briefcase that looked like it had seen better days. He sat down in the room's only chair, the one with the stain on the cushion. He opened his briefcase. He pulled out papers. He asked me questions about my money, about my property, about my wishes. I told him everything, about the house on Maple Street, the house I still owned, the house I had not been able to sell because Karen and Lisa had convinced me to keep it. For the memories, for the grandchildren, for the future. They said they would take care of it. They said they would pay the taxes. They said they would make sure everything was handled. I found out later they had not paid the taxes. They had let the house fall into disrepair. They had let the garden die, and the roof leak, and the oak tree in the backyard get struck by lightning, and nobody bothered to cut it down. The house was still mine, but it was worth less than half of what it used to be. My daughters had been slowly bleeding it dry, waiting for me to die so they could sell the carcass. I told Mr. Thompson about the life insurance policy, the one Gary left, the one that was still in my name, the one that would pay out a significant sum upon my death, the one that Karen and Lisa were so eager to collect that they could not even wait for my body to get cold. Mr. Thompson listened. He took notes. He did not interrupt. When I was finished, he looked at me over his glasses. He asked me what I wanted to do. He asked me if I wanted to go back to the facility. He asked me if I wanted to see my daughters. He asked me if I wanted to forgive them. I laughed. It was not a happy laugh. It was the kind of laugh that comes out when something is so broken that laughing is the only response that makes sense. I told Mr. Thompson that I did not want to go back. I did not want to see them. I did not want to forgive them. I wanted to disappear. For real this time. Mr. Thompson nodded. He said he could help me with that. He said he could help me change my will. He said he could help me protect my assets. He said he could help me make sure that Karen and Lisa never saw a single penny of my money. Not because he was cruel, because he believed in justice, because he had seen this story before. The children who forgot, the parents who paid the price, the inheritance that became a weapon instead of a gift. I signed the papers that night, in that cheap hotel room, with the stained carpet and the peeling wallpaper and the heater that sounded like it was dying. I signed my name, Margaret, the same name Gary used to say slow, the same name my daughters used to call out when they needed me, when they were small, when they still needed me. Now nobody needs me, and that is okay. I have learned to need myself. I am 71 years old. I have a metal rod in my hip. I have a heart that has been broken so many times, it does not beat the same way anymore. But I am alive, and I am free. I am free of the beige walls and the window that faced a parking lot, and the 9 years I spent waiting for people who were never coming. I do not know where I will go next. Maybe Florida, maybe Arizona, maybe a small town somewhere where nobody knows my name and nobody expects anything from me. I will take the photo, the one of Gary and the girls. I will keep it in my pocket, not because I still love them the way I used to, because I need to remember. I need to remember that love was real once, even if it did not last. The news will probably keep looking for me for a few days. Then they will move on to the next story, the next missing person, the next tragedy. Karen and Lisa will give their tearful interviews. They will tell the cameras how much they miss me. They will hire lawyers to try to find me. They will search for the woman they threw away because they need her to die so they can get her money. But they will not find me. I will make sure of that. I will change my name. I will move somewhere warm. I will sit in the sun. I will watch the waves. I will remember what it felt like to be young and in love and full of hope. I will remember Gary's hands, calloused and strong, holding mine. I will remember the sound of my daughters laughing before they learned how to lie. And when I die, when I finally die, I will die on my own terms, in a place of my choosing, with my own name on my lips, not the name they gave me, the name I gave myself, the name that belongs to the woman who survived, the woman who walked out of room 217, the woman who got on a bus, the woman who chose herself when nobody else would. That is my story. That is all I have left, a story and a photo, and a heart that is still beating even though it has no reason to. If you have children, if you have people who say they love you, do not wait for them. Do not sit by a window for 9 years. Do not let them put you in a beige room and forget that you are still breathing. You are still here. You still matter, even if they have forgotten, even if they never come. Walk out the door. Get on the bus. Go somewhere the sun touches your face. And do not look back. I did not look back. Not once. Not even when the bus passed the facility. Not even when I saw the lights of room 217 through the window. My window. The window I waited by for 9 years. I kept my eyes forward. On the road. On the horizon. On whatever comes next. Because I am Margaret. And I am still here.